Luol Deng is one of the world's most iconic basketball players. For over 9 seasons, he played for the Chicago Bulls, becoming the 4th top scorer in its history and a 2-time NBA All-Star.
To me, if you're not growing consistently, you're just in your comfort zone, right? Especially as an athlete, once somebody tells you you're good and you let that get to you, you're not going to last.
Born in South Sudan, Deng and his family were forced to flee what became Africa's longest civil war, which left over 2 million dead and 4 million displaced. Deng's family settled first in Egypt and then in the UK, where his basketball career first began, later representing Great Britain at the Olympic Games. In 2011, South Sudan became an independent country, and Luol Deng is now president of its basketball federation and one of its coaches.
Yo, pay attention. You're guarding the ball. Balls goes here. Where we at?
The team, affectionately known as the Bright Stars, has now qualified for their first ever World Cup. Deng has also set up a foundation that provides development and humanitarian support.
The way my story was, I felt that it was important that I give back. I felt that it was part of what I had to do.
Welcome to Generation Sport. I'm Iman Amrani, and I'm here in Tanzania, where South Sudan is playing in basketball's Afro-Can qualifiers. I've come to speak to Luol Deng about his remarkable life story, how his experiences have shaped his worldview, and how basketball is changing lives in South Sudan and across Africa. Luol, thank you so much for joining me on Generation Sport. We come and find you here in Tanzania. You're here with the South Sudan basketball team. How much time do you spend on the African continent at the moment?
Right now, probably 6 to 7 months. I'm splitting my time, but I'm spending a lot of time mostly in South Sudan.
And why did you decide to focus so much of your effort on basketball in South Sudan and the African continent more generally?
I just believe that it's going to play a big role. Being the youngest nation, I think sports has a way of bringing everyone together. All the young diaspora be inspired to see me go back to South Sudan and see the changes that we're making. But also basketball in general is growing in the continent.
So the South Sudan basketball team has made history by qualifying for the Basketball World Cup. What do you think that means for such a young country?
No, it's huge. I think, obviously, it's the biggest stage, the World Cup. We did it with such a short time, and the way that we did it by winning the majority of our games, I think it made everyone a believer. Even though this is basketball, it's very inspiring because we always wanted to be on a stage where everyone see, you know, the positive and the talent and what we can achieve as a nation. So, you know, being so young, this is something that we're going to celebrate for a long time.
I want to talk to you a bit about your background and how that informed the man you are today and the work that you're doing with the team. And as a young man, you know, you were a refugee with your family, and I wanted to know how your experience as a refugee kind of shaped your core values in terms of your priorities today and how you look at the world.
Obviously, we've been through a lot. A lot of us had to flee home and grow up elsewhere. But we keep our values and our culture, which kind of helps with still being connected with what's going on in Sudan or South Sudan. You know, I played a big part in just following up in, you know, the whole peace process, getting our independence. I remember I was playing in Chicago in 2011 when we were getting our referendum to be able to vote. Part of that, what we did was get buses for every South Sudanese community in the U.S. To be able to go and vote. So I've always felt that, you know, even though I'm away, I've always believed that I will return.
So I understand that you have had 9 siblings that you left the country with. And I think it's really interesting that when your family were in Egypt, 2 of your brothers met a famous NBA player who was also from South Sudan. Can you tell me a bit about that experience and how that impacted on you?
When I think back to growing up in Egypt, we had a community church that we used to go to where all the South Sudanese community, the refugees mostly, would meet. And when Manute Bol, who was at the time playing in the NBA, wanted to spend some time in Egypt and spend some time with the refugees there, the South Sudanese community, he started teaching basketball. At the time, I really had no interest in basketball. I was too young. So my brothers were ones that were being taught and spending time with Manute and playing other clubs, and they created a team. And when Manute left, my brother took it upon himself to kind of teach me and my friends everything that he learned. And it was some serious extreme training, which I'm very thankful for later down the line. But because of that, he never had the knowledge of it. So he took that knowledge of basketball from Manute and kind of passed that on to me.
It's quite amazing, though, seeing what you do and the work you do, and to see that somewhere further back in your story, that investment, you know, it wasn't directly put into you, but into your family, and it trickled down. Do you think that that inspired you or helped plant a seed for what you did later on? I don't want to overstate it, but I was curious when I read it.
No, I think it definitely did. I never knew that I would be in a position where I'm helping people. I just knew that I wanted to succeed somehow. But because of my culture, because of my parents, because of my family, because of people like Manute, I just felt that that became my life. I believe that's what I'm supposed to do.
And after Egypt, your family went to the UK, and you've said that the UK was the place where it all began. You said this country put us on a path to a new life, and you made great use of the opportunities that were given to you there. How do you feel when you look at the way the climate has changed towards refugees in the UK now since you were living there?
You know, for me, as a refugee, and I always try to explain people because when I was in the U.S. and I was still playing, the same thing was happening with the borders with Mexico or, you know, any other refugees that were coming in, or even in Europe, and I follow those things. And I think the public is just not being taught or being educated about what's going on. You know, for us, for example, as soon as we got to Egypt, I was 5 years old. I know that my family asked for political asylum. We didn't get out of Egypt till I was almost 11. Now, on the other side of it, I don't blame anyone for crossing borders. I just believe that, you know, as a parent or as anyone, you have to do the best you can do for a better life.
After you were in the UK, you then went to the United States, age 14. I'd like to know, for you, how it was being African in the States in the 90s, for example, when Africa didn't have the same level of, like, global cultural capital that it has now, for example. Like, now everyone knows about Afrobeats. Everybody knows much more about African athletes, for example. So I'm just interested if it was something you thought about at the time or not really.
No, I thought about it all the time. To me, it always bothered me that everything that was said about Sudan, South Sudan, everything was always negative. Even growing up, I was inspired to want to succeed because I want to put my country in a map, or I want to tell people not only I'm South Sudanese, but I'm African. I remember going to school, the way Africa was portrayed was always about the movies in the past or the stories that's always being told and still being used, that Africa always needs help. And I think I carried it with a chip on my shoulder because I always felt that, you know, I'm from somewhere that deserves, you know, better recognition, per se.
Do you feel like you still have that chip on your shoulder a bit, or have you got rid of it? Is it still fueling a lot of what you do in a positive way, or do you think you've managed to deal with that in a different way?
No, I think it's there, but I'm excited because of what I see in the continent. I'm inspired by when I go to Rwanda, when I come to Tanzania, when I go to Maputo, Mozambique. Not everything is perfect there, but I see now people are more comfortable with saying, you know, I'm in Tanzania not just to see the animals. I'm going there to enjoy the country. I'm going there because the people are nice. And it kind of inspires me because now there's more to Africans than just, you know, what you see in the movies. So.
And when you were in the United States, you played for some of the biggest teams in the NBA. We're talking like Chicago Bulls, Miami Heat, LA Lakers. And I want to ask you on a personal level, what is your greatest success in your career in terms of playing?
I think for me the biggest thing was getting drafted, because for me it was a quick turnaround. I was almost 11 when I got to the UK. Within 8 years, I was being drafted and being given probably one of the biggest contracts. For me, that's the quickest turnaround, but also it changed my whole family's life, and a lot of things happened the right way for me to be able to be drafted. So I'm always thankful for that moment.
It's refreshing to hear that as well, because we know sport is very, very powerful, but so often the focus is on things like money, and the focus is on things that, I guess, take the attention away from the power it really can have to change people's lives. You returned to what is now South Sudan in 2010, but whilst you're away, how did you maintain your relationship, and what was your relationship like with South Sudan?
When I was drafted in 2004, I started my foundation, Luo Deng Foundation. I didn't know what I was doing, but I felt that the way my story was and how everyone talked about my story, I felt that it was important that I give back. Not that I didn't want to, but I felt that it was part of what I had to do. And it was fine. So when I set up my foundation, I didn't know what I'm doing. So I started working with every organization that I could work with. And I could name a bunch like UNICEF, UNHCR, World Food Program. Anyone who came up to me and said they're doing something in South Sudan, I volunteered to help. After a while, I realized that I've learned a lot and I wanted to do my own.
And how did you find your way back from visiting in 2010? You started your foundation, but now coaching the South Sudan team. What was that journey?
Honestly, I never thought that I would be coaching. I'm not really coaching. I am kind of part of the coaching staff.
You're
I just
a
fill in.
reluctant coach.
No, I fill in when the coach is kind of caught up, and I guess I am an assistant coach. But honestly, I started doing my basketball camps. I started doing it in the UK. I started doing it in Australia. Started doing it in the US, in South Sudan. And we kept a simple database where we kind of not only helped the players with basketball, but we wanted to see how many players we can get a scholarship by using basketball. The goal was how to get them into college and then become whatever they can become. From that, later on down the line, when I retired, I realized that most of the players that are playing now, I literally knew them since they were young. So it made my transition easy to get involved with basketball in South Sudan.
And is it true that you're essentially funding the South Sudan team at the moment?
I was. So when I took over as the president of Basketball Federation in South Sudan, the idea came as nobody was there to take the position. And I knew the potential of what we can do in basketball. So when I took over, there was no funding. There's really nobody had the vision of, that South Sudan will be capable of going to the World Cup, that we'll have an opportunity to go to the Olympics, even play in Afro basket. For our people back home, that didn't exist. That would take crazy amount of work to achieve that. I believe otherwise. I really believe that we had the talent. I believe that we are one of the best teams in Africa. I believe that we can dominate in basketball just like how Kenya dominates in track and field, just like Ethiopia does, or just like Jamaica does in sprinting. So I decided to put my money where my mouth is and really fund it to just show people that we can, be out there and we can be as good as everyone. And when we did that, the players and everybody in my federation really surprised me by what we were able to accomplish and where we are now with just 3.5 years.
And you mentioned about founding the Luol Deng Foundation in 2005. Could you just explain to me clearly what was the thought process behind it and what is it now for you?
Yeah, no, when I did it, it was just help. Help South Sudanese and African however I can. There was no plan to it beside help. So when I worked with all these organizations, it went from, food to malaria nets to Doctors Without Borders. Now, when you look at my foundation, there's part of my foundation that focuses on sports. There's parts that focuses on health. There's parts that focuses on famine. any organization that wants to deliver food somewhere in South Sudan, we'll jump in and we'll be a part of that. Last year we gave out 300 plus wheelchairs, walkers, cane, because I was able to team up with an organization that, wanted to do that. So I can't just say that there's one thing that we do, but there's a lot of things that we do very well.
How have times changed? What is the foundation having to do now that maybe was different in the case when you were younger?
Can I be very honest with this?
Yeah, go ahead.
For me, one of the reasons I stopped working with a lot of organizations is because I feel that a lot of things are being very repetitive. A lot of people will keep on crossing the borders because we are doing the same thing over and over again. And part of it is because a lot of organizations are not putting down certain things that are sustainable or things that can uplift you. And what I mean by that is you can go anywhere in Africa and see a lot of refugees or a lot of, people that are displaced. In those places that they're displaced, they are being given things that they keep coming back for. But in Africa, there's a lot of lands and a lot of opportunity to create jobs. Even if you're, and I hate to call out anyone, but if you're UNHCR or World Food Program, it takes teaming up with people that know what they're doing in terms of, like, let's say agriculture, right? It's the easiest thing you could employ Africans, agriculture. But if I'm a refugee or if I'm displaced, and I know for a fact that if I can really become good at, or I can show up every day in the field and work, right? They're gonna pay me more so I could take care of my family. That makes me feel better. But instead, in a lot of refugee camp, you just come in the morning, you're given food, you're waiting until you get a political asylum to go somewhere else, but you continue staying in the same way, but yet you're displaced. You can't go and get a job. You can't just leave, right? So you're not stable enough. And I think that system has been there because organizations are gonna keep on asking for funding, right? But I think funding can be asked in to do something better with it instead of just funding to give. You can't just keep on giving and keep on repeating the same cycle, right? Because people want to better their lives. But if you're going to help, you have to show somebody how to better their lives. You can't just keep treating them and giving them something just to survive for today, but they come back tomorrow.
When I'm sitting opposite you, it's very powerful, and I can see that you have this strong conviction. What's that thing inside you that's pushing you to keep doing all of this stuff?
I'm a product of an opportunity. So maybe I see life that way. And when I give an opportunity, I'm given an opportunity more than just showing up, There's individuals till today, right, that will come to Africa and build a basketball court. Just build a basketball court. Then they will go back and share a story of how they build a basketball court, right? But the problem with that is, a couple years later, they'll go back to that basketball court and see that the whole basketball court is messed up, or there's holes, or they got to paint it, or they got to renovate the whole thing again, right? So in a way, it provided somebody something just for a little shorter time for fun, right? But now there's individuals that build a basketball court and they build programs. Within those programs, they put people there that are actually teaching those individuals and those kids the right way to play basketball or whatever. And then when you come back, you find out some of these kids are playing for clubs, they're getting paid, the coaches are coaching the team, or maybe they get a scholarship, or maybe they even become professional, whether it's basketball, football, whatever. That's the difference between, helping with a purpose instead of helping so you look good or so your story sounds good, right?
And I just want to bring this back to the basketball that you're talking about and basketball in Africa. And for you specifically, having come from the NBA, where you have every opportunity and privilege that you would possibly dream of as a player, how is it coming back to South Sudan and to Africa, where the resources aren't necessarily there? You want to provide the best things that you can for your players.
Yeah, I look at it two ways, right? In terms of living in the U.S., which I still split my time, right? Living in the U.S., living in a big house, you could think about it, professional athlete, cars, everything, right? If you tell the story in that narrative, everything is there, right? But when I'm there, I'm missing everything that is not there, So when I come back to the continent, there's so much that we have to offer, even in South Sudan. There's so much there that I can't find over there.
Like what?
Just people, right? There's like little things, like feeling that I belong there, right? Going around, going to different stores, different shops, those are my people, right? Sometimes people just sit outside and just talk. Your neighbor, like you go across, families get together. But in terms of the luxury and all that, yes, it looks good, but I guess it depends on who you are and what your needs are. We often talk about what's missing from this side, but we don't talk about what's missing on the other side. All right? So that's just how I see it.
One thing that you said somewhere was the most common and harmful addiction in the world is the draw of comfort, which definitely seems to speak to exactly what you're saying. Why do you think people are so drawn by comfort? Why do you think it's such a difficult thing for people to break away from?
To me, if you're not growing consistently, if you're not effective, if you're not helping others, you're just in your comfort zone, right? So whether it's just the basketball team now, you know, whether it's starting a league back in South Sudan, whether it's my foundation growing in different angles, it's always room for, you know, challenging yourself and growing. And I think, especially as an athlete, once somebody tells you you're good, right, and as an athlete, and you let that get to you, you're not going to last. Even if you get an award today, you know, it sounds good, you should be happy, but that was not your plan to begin with, you know. If that's your plan, you've already reached your comfort, I guess, so.
You do much more than just basketball. Do you feel like you would want to go into something like politics? Do you feel like moving into a space like politics would allow you to be able to impact some of the things that you're talking about that are failing and that aren't working? You've already shaken your head. Well, answer, go on.
I think honestly, I want to be in a position where I'm respected well enough where my opinion matters. But I fear politics. I really do. Politics all around the world is very dirty. It really is. And when you get into politics, you take sides, right? It ends up being a fraternity. It ends up being not generally what's for the people. It's more about what's for your party at the end of the day. I think more being independent, I'm able to speak about a variety of things, but I would never be able to affect anything unless I put myself in a position where I actually matter, you know, to not just people, but to also politicians who are making the decisions, right? You know, if there's a party there that kind of makes sense for everybody, which there isn't, then maybe I'll get into politics.
It's interesting to hear you say that because your dad was a politician as well. So I guess maybe you had more of an understanding and perspective of how things work because of the experience your father had. I don't want to project, but...
No. So, yeah, my father was the Minister of Education and Transportation in the whole of Sudan at the time. I always tell people I'm a college dropout. I went to Duke for 1 year. I was doing well in school, but I ended up playing basketball. I never went back to college. Not saying that I'm not smart, but my dad's thing is education, right? Educating people and writing books and being in politics. My route is I want to say the right things. I want to be effective. I want to make a change. But at the end of the day, majority of the time, I'm using sports as a tool to kind of push for that outlet and that platform, if that makes sense.
And I just want to, you know, to close off, just ask you, do you think that sport really does transcend borders in a similar way, I guess, to the way that you've almost transcended borders yourself as a refugee? Do you believe that it does have the power to change people's lives?
Yes, I do. I think from my experience, sports has changed my life. Sports has given me an opportunity to be in the platform that I'm in today. And I think especially just around the world, all the majority of countries that are struggling with unity. You know, we've seen it, for example, with Nelson Mandela in South Africa, you know, whether it's rugby. With us, with basketball, we have a lot that we need to achieve as a country going forward and being a young generation. But the way we're rallying around this and going to the World Cup, right? For other countries, it's a small achievement because they existed for a long time. But for us, it's bigger than basketball because unity is important, and it's our first thing to actually put South Sudan in the map. So, yes, the sports can bring people together, and sports is part of nation building.
It's a remarkable story. It's absolutely incredible. And I'm so glad that I could come here and speak to you about it. And I wish you and the team all the best of success in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.